and they didn't let me know. But you're embarrassing you in front of all these people, like you're embarrassing.
Guys, 2:30, 2:24 in the morning. This is sort of against the current sleep schedule that I'm on. I've been on a pretty good sleep schedule lately ever since coming back from Mexico, but we are in the throes of a pretty fun PLO game right now at the Bellagio. 2-5 PLO is actually running at the Bellagio. Been in this game for more than a handful of hours. We're gonna see how long this goes on for, but I'm gonna have some hands for you here in a little while.
About being a member of the Information Society. That's a difficult question because I didn't know we were in the Information Society.
The Palace Station, a place we've never been to, but newly remodeled and fantastically remodeled, I might add. My first time in here since they've redone the Palace Station Casino, Resort, Hotel, Spa, and Suites. Don't even know if they have a spa, but I'm going to say so anyway. Good job, Palace Station. Looks absolutely fantastic in here. By the way, if I sound a little bit different from what you're used to hearing, I purchased a little lavalier mic that hooks right up to my iPhone. So this is what it sounds like on the microphone, and this is what it sounds like just in the audio through the G7X camera, and then back over to the lavalier right now. So let me know what you guys think about that difference. Hopefully it's a good one. Hopefully we're moving in the right direction with the audio. 2 years later, a year and a half later, 20 months later. So yeah, just checking out this property here. Took a short walk around, took a few shots of the place, and the really most important aspect of this property is where I'm sitting right now, the Oyster Bar. This place is a Vegas institution. I wouldn't use that phrase lightly, but when you come here, expect to wait. There's always going to be a short wait here at the Oyster Bar, but good news, this place is open 24/7, so maybe sometimes a day are going to be a little bit more busier, lunchtime, dinner time, than if you come at say 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. But it's not going to matter what time of day or night you come, because man, food is on point here. I'm going to enjoy this food, chill here for a little bit, and then move away from the bar, maybe get back to the madness that transpired last night at the poker table. Alright guys, I have since moved over to the Boathouse restaurant and bar. Obviously my first time in here. This is a new addition to the Palace Station. Alright, let's get into why you're actually here. So I was pretty surprised to see that there was actually a half and half game going at the Bellagio at the 2-5 level. Half no limit, half PLO. 2-5 no limit hold'em for 9 hands. Then the game switches to 2-5 pot limit Omaha. What usually happens in these games, not always, but quite often, what will happen a lot of the times is that the players will eventually agree to just play pot limit Omaha. Often there's going to be more action in the PLO games, and when you look at those 2 cards instead of those 4 cards, a lot more possibilities amongst those 4 cards than there are those 2 cards. So what often ends up happening is that people just drop the no limit and straight PLO, no more round by round, which is exactly what happened in this game. The game was probably going for a couple hours before I arrived. Maybe an hour and a half after I arrived, straight PLO from the rest of the night. But well before that happened, in the very first hand that I was dealt, we looked down at ace, 10-8 with 1 suit in the small blind. Turns out I misread my notes in this hand. My side cards were not 10-8, and I don't remember what they were, but turns out it doesn't matter. Okay, back to the hand. There was a raise from early position, 1 or 2 callers, and then I go ahead and 3-bet it from out of position. Seems to me that it's okay to do this, especially with 1 suit. I could see flat calling with dry aces, but seeing as we do have 1 suit available and some callers in between to squeeze, I go ahead and put in the 3-bet. The initial raiser folds and the button makes the call. The flop comes king, queen, 10, rainbow, which is pretty interesting. Interesting because we have 2 aces, so we block the nuts here. And high card flop could benefit both of our ranges, but having those 2 blockers to the nuts gives us an interesting opportunity here to go ahead and barrel all 3 streets. Probably put a lot of pressure on my opponent's ranges, my opponent's holdings, potential holdings, which could be sets, 2 pairs, and then maybe pair plus draw type hands. There's gonna be a lot of time where 1 pair might not be good here, I would think. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this hand into a bluff. So I start by betting the flop. My opponent makes the call. So already we kind of know what's gonna shape up here in this situation. We're probably just gonna have to barrel and throw in all the barrels to get the job done here. So on the turn of the 6 of spades, which adds a backdoor flush draw, I'm gonna keep betting here. This time I bet around $200, and once again he makes the call, as I might expect him to do with his full range that he continued with on flop. The river brings a jack, so again another interesting card. Now it should be even more likely for us to have the nuts here since we have those 2 aces. I'm gonna go ahead, keep telling my story, keep repping that we flop the nuts, and again still have the nuts obviously here on the river. So I stick the rest of the money in there. It's not that much, but I would expect my opponent to have to fold all of his hands unless he improved to the nuts on the river. All those 2 pairs and set type hands, he's probably gonna have to let those go. So that's what I do. I go ahead and jam a little bit under $300 into the middle. And unfortunately, my opponent snap calls because he does in fact river the nuts with ace, king, something, something. Can't unfortunately tell you what the other 2 cards were, but he did turn the flush draw, which makes sense, allowed him to continue on the turn. And if he doesn't improve there on the river to the nuts, obviously we're gonna get the job done, I would have to imagine. But call this down, maybe potentially a little bit lightly, but flop top pair, top kicker with a gutter ball on the flop and backdoor nut flush draw. Works out for him. And maybe I got a little bit carried away there. Maybe I should just shut down on the river. I don't know, having those 2 blockers in my hand makes me want to just go for it, and it doesn't work out this time. So right off the bat, we are in the hole in this game, down about $700 right off the bat, very first hand. So the good news is that we have a bit of a bluffy image, and should be able to put some value bets in going forward. This is kind of the nature of PLO a little bit. Even the variance can show its head in multiple ways. The way you might expect, which is getting in with only a small equity favorite on a flop or a turn, but even in the end, trying to represent hands and actually running into it there on the river. But that's okay. We're buckled in. We're in our seat, in for the long haul, and very shortly after that, once again, we look down at 2 aces along with 10 and an 8. Single suited aces, raise it up to 15 from under the gun. Cut off in the small blind call this time. So again, 3 ways to a flop here. 9-7-3 with 2 clubs. Interesting spot because I do have the ace of clubs, and we flop an open ender to go along with our top over pair. This is one of those spots where I'm not exactly sure what's best to do here. Probably best to just go ahead and bet it since we do have the ace of clubs. So that's what I do. I put out a bet of $30. The cutoff, however, puts in a raise. He makes it 100 to go. The other player folds and it's back to me. So I'm not going to go anywhere in this situation with an open ender plus overpair. If we turn a set, we have the nuts. And there's also some interesting opportunities here on some other runouts. The turn presents one of those opportunities. It's the 8 of clubs. So again, since we have the ace of clubs, I'm just gonna go ahead and rep it. I'm gonna rep the nut flush draw. Again, it might take multiple barrels if we get called on the turn here, since a lot of times my opponent will have a set if he raised us on the flop. But assuming no board pair on the river, it's the last barrel you would think, again, should get the job done. So I'm gonna go ahead and start now. I bet $220 here on the turn. Interesting though is that my opponent just snap folds. So we don't need to fire the multiple barrels this time, thankfully. And we turn our hand into a bluff once again with the pocket aces. Later on, the action started to pick up, as it tends to do in these PLO games. We had a couple of players who were looking to gamble. I'm not one to shy away too much in these gambling situations, especially when I look down once again at pocket aces, especially of the double suited variety. So long story short, in this next hand, I don't know if there's going to be too much to take away from this hand either, aside from the fact that we somehow managed to get double suited aces all in pre-flop versus king, queen, 8-6 single suited. I've said it a couple times recently. I'm going to say it again here. Sometimes when the no limit game is a little bit slow, maybe take a look at the PLO game, because you might find a little bit of action happening on that table. And we for sure had the most action at our table in the room. So this one, good news, works out for us. The double suited aces are going to hold up against the king, queen, 8-6. We only run it once. We're scooping it. Open, 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet jam from the king, queen, 8-6, and aces are good. Next hand, there could be some decent chance that I completely screwed it up, but what else is new? You know, that happened in No Limit. It's going to happen in PLO, if not more so. So there's a straddle line in this hand at $10. The under the gun player makes it 30. Once again, believe it or not, we're looking down at pocket aces. Looking back at my notes from this session, this is a little bizarre. Okay, every single hand so far has been pocket aces. I didn't even realize while I was writing this down. Obviously, there's lots of hands in between that were happening and going on, but these are the highlights I'm feeding you guys, and so far, nothing but aces. So in this hand, 3 bets to 100 with ace, ace, 9, 3. 3 clubs in my hand, but pocket aces. It is a suit, so looking to put some more money in versus this player in particular. We see 2 cold callers and the initial razor call, so already $400 in the middle there. Flop's a favorable one for us with these pocket aces. It comes queen, jack, 8, all clubs. So we flop the nuts. Since we have the 9 of clubs in our hands, we block the straight flush, so best hand in our possession. There's 2 checks, and I decided to make a small c-bet. Maybe just try and derive some value from this hand and try and squeeze out a little bit of value. It's going to be tough to get a ton of value, I think, here unless someone has king high flush or flop at the top set. So after betting 125, there's 1 call behind me. And then back to the initial razor, who makes it 425 to go. 300 on top of my bet. Tough to try and discern what hands he might be doing this with, but I think it has to be more likely a strong flush than it would be a set or 2 pair, because there's not too much reason to raise those types of hands. It seems like those types of hands would be more likely and more inclined to take the cheap price being afforded on the flop to try and improve, especially a set, because there's both flushes and a straight available. So I just go ahead and flat call here, and again, not really sure if that's the best option, but that's what I choose, and 1 player behind me makes the call. So the pot is building already, and 3 ways to a turn card, which comes a brick, mostly. It's a 6 of clubs. So now 4 clubs on board, but obviously we still have the nuts here, and the initial razor checks it over to me now. So I think it's time to go ahead and go for some value here, because it seems like the small blind is very likely to have a set here and is drawing. Pot is pretty sizable. At this point I have about $1,700 in my stack. So if I bet the pot, that's almost my entire stack. Just go ahead and shut down the small blind's calling range here. Maybe still be able to try and get some value from the initial razor if he happens to have a king high flush. So that's what I go ahead and do, just pot it, which leaves me about $100 behind. Small blind goes ahead and folds, and the initial razor goes deep into the tank. Eventually he decides, after counting my stack down, the entire stack, decides to let it go. He makes the fold, and if I knew he had the king high flush, obviously I would have preferred a call since he's drawing dead there, but no complaints about a nice sizable pot. We do shut out the small blind who had some equity in the hand. Happy to take that one down as it was. All right, next interesting hand actually isn't pocket aces. There's some action in front of me. There was a raise and a couple calls, and I looked down at ace, king, queen, queen, 1 suit to the ace. So again, nice premium looking hand here. I 3-betted out of the big blind, and we see 2 callers. Flop comes ace, 6, 4, rainbow. So I'm gonna go ahead, I think, and bet pretty much my entire range here on ace high flops, especially in a 3-bet pot. I size it down a little bit since fairly dry board. No flush draws, and sure there's some straight draws available, but shouldn't be too much to worry about. So I bet $160, which could be on the small side, but maybe not so bad. Both players, interestingly, make the call. The turn is a 4 of diamonds, backdoor flush draw on board now. I keep my sizing pretty small again, so it's something I might do if I have to have pocket aces here and fill up on the turn. I bet $160 because I don't think many hands will want to continue drawing to straights now that there is a pair on the board, and I could very easily have pocket aces in this situation. The first player calls and the second player folds. So we're off to a river card heads up, which is an offsuit king. Should be a pretty good card. We now beat ace 6. We beat pretty much everything other than some sort of 4. So with that in mind, I decided to check it since there could be a lot of missed draws out there. Don't think we can get too much value from worse in this situation anyway. So I check it over to him, and he doesn't have too much money left in his stack. He goes ahead and he jams it all in. It's only a little bit over $300, and I don't think I have much choice in this situation either way. Seems like a pretty straightforward call due to the size of the pots. So I go ahead and make the call, and unfortunately my opponent shows us ace 4, flop 2 pair, turn boat, and kind of a cooler there the entire way, especially on the river after we improved to top 2 pair. Don't think there's gonna be too much I can do in that situation. Maybe somehow, no, I was going to say maybe find a fold versus some players, but I doubt it. I don't see how that's ever going to be possible. So it just seems like kind of like a situation where you're automatically forced to lose some money. And that's kind of the way I look at it. Thankfully, my opponent didn't have too much more money behind on the river. Going to have to call a pretty sizable bet there no matter what, I think, on the river. All right, one more interesting hand from this PLO session of madness. There's a player who was playing a very high frequency of his hands. He goes ahead and opens it once again. He makes it 20 to go. There's a call on my right. I'm on the button. I look down at ace, queen, 10-6, double suited. Pretty sure this is a hand that I want to put in a 3-bet. I'm in position against a player that's opening a ton of hands. There's a cold caller, and we can put in that squeeze with a very premium, very pretty hand. So that's what I do. $80 to go. The big blind cold calls, and the initial raiser makes the call. Player on my right folds. So we're going 3 ways to a flop here. 10-9-3 rainbow. Backdoor nut flush draw available for us. Flop ourselves top pair, top kicker with some good run out potential. And I think I want to go ahead and protect my top pair here. So I go ahead and put in a bet. Make it 175. And the big blind makes the call. The turn is a 4 of diamonds, which brings up a backdoor flush draw once again. He checked it to me, and this is one of those interesting spots where I'm not exactly sure what's best to do here. Again, my opponent has been playing a lot of hands, so that factor makes me want to lean towards putting in a bet here. The other better hands that he could have outflopped us with would probably put in a raise on the flop, something like a set or 2 pair. That was my thinking, at least at the time. I'm not sure if that's going to be accurate always, but that is what led me to go ahead and put in another bet on the turn, this time to the tune of $600. My opponent snap calls, doesn't even ponder it for a second. He just immediately sticks the $600 in there. So once again, pot is brewing here. And when the river comes down, a pretty safe looking 10, I'm a little bit relieved. And even though my opponent goes ahead and bets $700, which I guess you could maybe consider putting in a raise here. It didn't really occur to me too much, just because I think in the moment I wasn't exactly positive whether or not I had the best hand, but once that 10 comes on the river, it seems like we should almost always have the best hand here, because if he somehow turned 2 pair with, say, a 10-4 in his hand, something like that, it seems like we would have seen a check raise there on the turn. So I think I sort of autopilot it and just make the snap call there on the turn rather than thinking about it and consider putting in a raise. But it's a safe run out. It's a very safe run out for me. I just go ahead and make the call right away. And he says, really? And is very hesitant to show his hand. So I do my usual thing when a player who is not a regular obviously does not have the winning hand and is kind of reluctant to show. So I just tell him I have a 10 and go ahead and show my ace 10, and sure enough, that's gonna be good to take down this pot. So that one works out. We get a lot of pocket aces in this session. A lot of good hands coming our way in this PLO session, aside from me dusting off of over 100 big blinds, 150 big blinds in the first hand with those pocket aces, putting in the 3-barrel bluff. That doesn't work, but a lot of hands work out after that. So we get into this game for about $1,700. We're gonna cash out of this PLO game for $4,400, a little bit more than that. That means we're cashing out a profit from this PLO game to the tune of $2,700. Not too many complaints. Some serious takeaways from the PLO action that we've seen the past couple of vlogs. Some swings. Expect some big swings if you're going to dip your toes into the PLO waters. The blinds are going to be a little bit deceptive, so probably expect swings of twice the size that you might expect, at least maybe 2.5 times. Expect to need a bankroll of probably twice the size, maybe even 3 times the size of whatever you need for identical wine levels and no limit hold'em. That could be even shortchanging it, because I'm not an expert in this PLO thing. We should find out who we can ask for expected bankroll swings and required bankroll for the game, this PLO game. All right, guys, lots of things coming up on the agenda. Some very interesting projects that are in the works, and looking forward to cluing you guys in a little bit more on those things. A couple things that I'm very excited about and look forward to talking with you guys more about very soon. But potentially before that, there's some travel coming up heading out to Los Angeles for Live at the Bike once again. I think we will be kicking that off on Monday. 3 days of Live at the Bike action coming at you guys next week. Johnny Vibes and Brado and my fellow bloggers will be there as well. Probably some other familiar faces that you guys have become accustomed to in the Live at the Bike lineups. So that should be pretty fun. Getting in there either Sunday or Monday, hopping in the game, I think on Monday. Don't hold me to it if it ends up being Tuesday, but I think it's gonna be Monday. I'm probably gonna be playing a session somewhere in Detroit at some point, either next weekend or the following week after that. We're going down to Austin. We're coming to the Texas Card House. Brad and I, we're heading to Portland. We're gonna be on the Poker Guys show out of Meadows Casino. That's happening. We're working on Seattle. Guys, just so much happening this second half of the year. It's gonna be a blast. Lots of travel, but once games pick it up here in Vegas again, more of that. In the meantime, if they don't, it seems like PLO is not going anywhere anytime soon. All right, guys, watch this space. A lot more to come. More PLO, more travel, more of the usual, and all the above.